If you're selling high level to small businesses, you've got to have a strategy to collect as much cash up front to pay for your growth and pay for your costs of sales and marketing. In this video, I'm going to explain the math behind this model and show you strategies to make it work. My name is Mike. I'm the founder of servicesthatscale.com. If you're not familiar with me, I have built two multi-seven-figure service businesses selling to the small business community, one in IT services and one in marketing services. I was on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies in America 3 years in a row. My companies were also recognized as a best place to work in their communities, and I was able to sell one of those businesses for a multi-seven-figure exit. I share all that with you just so you have some context to know that what I'm sharing with you in these videos is based on my experience actually building businesses and is not just theory. There's a saying that every entrepreneur has experienced in their career, and that is that growth consumes cash. And what that means is while you're growing, and the faster that you try to grow, the more that you're going to need to invest cash into the business typically to make that happen. And that could be everything from having to hire and train new employees to pay for your actual sales and marketing costs to acquire those customers. And of course, as you're growing, what you're hoping is that the revenues from your business are paying for that growth. But as most entrepreneurs have experienced, that isn't always the case unless you are very careful about how you're structuring the payments for your services to make sure that it is actually covering those costs of growth. Otherwise, you got to have some deep pockets. You've got to have some savings, or you've got to have credit cards that you can run up, or you found an investor, or you can take a loan, whatever it is to pay for that growth. But the best way to pay for the growth, of course, is to pay for it from sales. Now, when we're selling high level to small business customers, there's only so much that we can charge on a monthly basis, typically somewhere between $297 a month and say $697 a month is really that price range that small businesses are going to stick with if they're going to be staying with you as a customer for years, which should be our goal. Anything above those price points, and you are typically going to lose those customers as they churn much quicker than that because they are price sensitive. So we've got to be very thoughtful about our pricing on our monthly recurring payments. And again, the goal is to keep those customers for years. So it's proven that somewhere in that $297, $497, $697 price range is where you can get those customers to stick long term. But the problem with charging those price points is that the cost to acquire a customer oftentimes is way more than that monthly payment. So you can be in the hole for months and months before you would be able to actually recover the cost that you invest in selling to that customer, which obviously, unless you have a bunch of money, that's a recipe for going broke fast. So we've got to have a strategy to be able to collect as much cash up front as we possibly can to cover those sales and marketing costs. One thing that's very common in this industry, particularly as you're just getting started out, is that you completely underestimate the cost of actually growing and acquiring customers. The reason why in most cases is that you're just thinking it's your time. It's not actually a cost. But the reality, of course, is that your time is worth money and you need to properly account for it, because as soon as you expect to actually get a salary out of your business, or you expect to be able to pay a salesperson to be able to join your business so that they can help close more customers for you, you're going to experience the reality that time is worth money. Nobody's going to work for you for free. So you have to understand those real costs to acquire customers early on in your business model to make sure that you're pricing properly and structuring your sales process properly. This is a great article from a venture capitalist who does a lot of work in the SaaS space, where he analyzed how low can your prices be and still actually afford to pay a salesperson given the most common compensation rates and things like that in the industry. It's a fantastic article. I'll put a link to this in the description of the video here, but you can see here, at the end of the day, most inside sales reps can probably close 8 to 12 deals a month. Okay, 8 to 12 deals a month maximum. So I want you to think, if a salesperson costs $120,000 in pay, which would be their base pay plus some bonus, that's not even including benefits, and they closed 10 deals a month, you're talking about $1,000 per deal just in the salesperson costs. Okay, just in the salesperson costs, not including the marketing costs. Now, this is assuming that these salespeople are fully loaded with leads, that you've got a really solid inbound lead generation process so that these guys are doing 60 demos a month. I can tell you, in building 2 very successful businesses selling to small businesses, I didn't have my salespeople getting 60 demos a month, okay? That's a huge number. And my experience is that if I can get a salesperson consistently closing 4 or 5 deals a month, I can grow my business very quickly, very profitably using the model that I'm showing you here. But again, if I'm paying that salesperson somewhere around $10,000 a month and they're closing 4 deals, that's $2,500 just in salesperson costs alone. So the math adds up fast. You've got to be realistic about it. If you're not familiar with the specific numbers in terms of selling to small businesses and how much it costs to acquire a customer, the typical cost to acquire a customer in the small business space is between $500 and $2,500, but it can go well up from there depending on the complexity of your offer and your sales process. And in fact, to achieve anything near $500 now really requires that that's a sale that's generated with some sort of free trial offer where a salesperson is typically not involved, and probably a sale that you're generating from emailing an existing lead on your list versus having to do any sort of paid advertising to get that customer. So you have to be running a really lean operation to keep those costs to acquire a customer down in that $500 range. I have always used between $1,500 and $2,500 myself as my cost to acquire a customer in terms of my benchmark and planning. But again, depending on what you're selling and the complexity of that offer, it can go up from there. In case any of these numbers maybe seem a little crazy to you, just walk through the math with me here real quick. In this particular funnel example, let's just say that you are paying $5 to get a lead onto your list, to get somebody to opt in and give you their email, and you are investing $2,500 a month in cold traffic to be able to get those leads. That's 500 leads, again at $5 a piece, and that is actually a really low cost to get a lead in this business at this point. With paid traffic, you could easily spend 3, 4, or 5 times that amount to get a lead. Now, let's assume that 5% of those are actually qualified prospects that are looking to buy sometime in the near future. So that's 25 out of that $2,500 spend, which means that they are now $100 each to have a qualified prospect. Let's say that 20% of those actually turn into opportunities that are ready to close this month. That's $500 a piece now. So if you close at 30%, and we're just going to do easy math here and say it's 1, that's $1,666 to acquire that customer. Now, that is before salesperson costs. We were just talking about marketing costs right here. So you also have to add some sort of salesperson commission. You can see how these numbers very easily turn into that $2,500 cost to acquire a customer when you add in the cost of marketing and sales combined. Here are some real numbers actually that I was able to dig up doing research online. HubSpot in 2012. Now, 2012 is about when they stopped publishing their cost to acquire a customer. They used to report on that publicly. Then they stopped doing it for good reasons, because they were actually trying to keep that number secret while they grew, because they didn't want to freak out the public investors too much. But you can see here, customer acquisition cost $6,880. $6,880. Now, what happened to HubSpot's customer acquisition costs since then? It's a really good question. It's an important one to know in this industry, since they are obviously such a major player and a benchmark that we should all be looking at. Their customer acquisition cost actually apparently went way up from that for a period of time and then has come back down, but it is still believed to be somewhere in that $6,000 to $10,000 range, which will explain how they make that work here in just a moment. You can see here some fantastic research that I found from a venture capitalist on the cost that HubSpot had to invest to acquire a customer. And you can see here, these numbers got huge. 2011, over $6,000 to 2016, almost $16,000 to acquire a customer. You may be thinking that's absolutely outrageous, but look where HubSpot is now. They were clearly investing in dominating the market, and they raised the cash to be able to do it. They knew that it costs money to grow their business. Again, growth consumes cash. you're competing against the HubSpots of the world. So you've got to have a strategy to be able to have enough cash to acquire those customers. Now we've got some other numbers here to compare against HubSpot. One, Constant Contact from 2012. If you're not familiar with them, this is one of the earliest email marketing platforms for small businesses. I can't remember who they ended up getting acquired by, but they had to sell because they couldn't make the numbers work. Now you can see here they had a customer acquisition cost there of $450. They were actually getting small business owners into live events, getting lots of them into a room, giving them a special offer to get on that software, and they just could not find a way to make the numbers work. And those are $2012. So keep in mind, if it was close to $500 to acquire a customer, then obviously prices on everything have gone up since then, and online marketing has become much more expensive and competitive. So those numbers are certainly going to be higher than that in today's dollars. But again, they couldn't make the math work. That's the important part. And then a typical small business SaaS. So this is a small business software platform selling software as a service at those low price points, somewhere between $100 and $200 a month is pretty typical. You're familiar with these software platforms. You and I all use them. And this is typically a self-service sign up. There's some sort of free trial or freemium, and the software is easy enough to use that you're just logging in, creating your account, and getting started. And that's critical to understand because our services based on HighLevel, they're not at that point. We've got to provide some service, some hand-holding, some training, setup, all that type of stuff, much more like HubSpot does. And that's one of the reasons why HubSpot has to have its higher price points and onboarding fees and things like that, which we'll discuss. But a typical small business SaaS platform, even with that freemium model and that free trial model, is still about $1,500 for them to sign on a new customer on average. Some businesses, it's significantly higher than that. And the only way that they can make that work is because they are almost entirely removing the salesperson from that process wherever they can and just doing that inbound marketing to some sort of freemium and free trial sign up. So these are just some additional numbers to give you some context on what it costs to get a customer in this marketplace. Okay, so that first half of the video there frames the challenges of this business, which is we're selling to small businesses. They don't have a ton of money to pay us. So we have to make sure that the regular prices that we're charging them on that monthly recurring fee are low enough that they're going to stick with us for a long time. We have to have that to maximize the lifetime value of the customer and give us that good recurring income that we're looking for to build a solid business. But to acquire those customers, it also takes a decent chunk of change and a good amount of effort to do that. In order to make all of this work out, we have to have the cash to cover those costs of sales and marketing, in addition to, of course, providing a good service at the right price points to maintain those customers. So in the rest of the video here, we're going to get into the solution as to how we generate that upfront cash flow so that we can make this whole model work. In this industry, there are these common billing scenarios that really have a massive impact on cash, and particularly that upfront cash flow that allows you to pay for your cost of sales and your cost of marketing. They go across a spectrum here. On the far left here, this is really a bad agency model, but it's a common agency model. And that's where you're doing some sort of custom work, you're designing a custom website, something like that, and you're not getting paid until after the work is complete. That's terrible for cash and terrible for growth. It's a terrible business model. I don't know why anybody would do it, and yet there's still plenty of agencies that are out there operating this way where, maybe if they're doing a really good job, they're collecting some sort of down payment for the work up front, but then they're not collecting final payment until the project is done, the customer has approved it, and then oftentimes the customer holds out on the invoice for the next 30 days, 45 days or so before they actually pay. They are essentially just sucking the life out of your business in terms of ability to grow. So that is the worst case scenario. Then there is getting paid monthly for access to software and your services. That's a dramatically better model because you're actually collecting that cash each month as they access your services. Ideally, of course, you want to be just hitting that on a credit card or an automatic withdrawal from a bank account so that you don't have any collections really to deal with as well. Then there's getting some sort of prepaid upfront payment for your services That could be for some sort of startup cost to get the account set up, to do onboarding, training, or some sort of project work. Plus, you're getting that payment for monthly access. Now, we are in a dramatically better business model, as the math will show here in just a moment. And then, if you can actually get prepaid for that monthly access for, let's say, the next year ahead, upfront, now we're talking the best case scenario for our cash and our growth. And this is actually what should be the goal, is that you're actually getting them to prepay for at least 6 months in advance. When you can do that, you really can fuel the growth of your business and just have a much more enjoyable ride in growing your company. To position our services to get as much upfront cash as possible, we want to communicate as much value that is coming upfront as possible. So what I teach is my Surge to SaaS approach. And you can see here, this framework walks through a couple of different steps before it gets the customer onto our signature system. Our signature system is just the language I use for the actual complete package of services, as well as the high-level tools that you're going to offer to your customer, and the name and the price and all of that you put on it. So let's just say that this is your $497 a month service offer that you're going to put in place for this customer. And they're going to be paying you for that at $497 a month after month. That's the goal. But to get them there, to get them onto that system, there's work that needs to be done first. Okay, I teach an audit and a surge. In the audit, you're going to determine what are the marketing gaps, what are the most effective things that you're going to put in place right away to get them real value. And in the surge, we're selling them everything that we're setting up and doing for them upfront to deliver maximum value. So with HighLevel and with the snapshots, we can deliver a tremendous amount of value upfront before we actually get them turned on to that signature system and paying us month after month. We could be setting up a new website, new funnels, campaigns, automation, simply setting up their users in the system properly, doing training for the system. There's so much value in that initial surge, but you've got to present it. You've got to make sure that the customer knows everything that you're doing some value stacking, putting some prices associated with each of those things that you're doing so that the customer can see that upfront value. And then the beauty is with HighLevel, again, with those snapshots, even though there's tons of value being delivered there, we can set those things up very quickly. And then we can charge for less than the value that we're presenting in those numbers when we do our value stack, which makes it seem like a real deal, but still allows us to capture good upfront cash. So it's not hard at all to present a surge that's worth, say, $15,000 in value, and then offer to only charge them $5,000 for that $15,000 in value, which of course then is a very attractive upfront cost to them compared to what they were expecting, which allows you to keep that sales cycle moving pretty quickly, but still capture that upfront cash. Now, I oftentimes get agencies that push back on me and say, Mike, I can't charge thousands of dollars in that upfront fee. No small business is going to pay that. Look, you've got to learn to get comfortable with numbers. You have a psychology around selling and cash that is costing you money, and it's going to cost you the growth of your business. Just look at HubSpot right here. HubSpot is just selling tools, tools at $800 a month. That just includes access for 3 people to use their tools at $800 a month. And look right here, cost shown does not include the required one-time professional onboarding fee of $3,000. It's $3,000 just for them to set up your account and do training. Okay, again though, this is one of these things that HubSpot learned was absolutely key to fueling their growth, was to have this onboarding here for 2 reasons. 1, it gives them upfront cash. 2, it gives them the cash to really professionalize that onboarding experience so that they knew that they could take the time to set up the customer properly and train them properly so that they were going to be most likely to have success with their software and continue with them for years to come. That's incredibly important for you. So you have got to get comfortable with charging upfront. Look at this, $7,000 for the enterprise onboarding here if they sign up for the Marketing Hub Enterprise plan, which is just 5 seats for $3,600 a month. So you have your psychology around your numbers. You've got to learn what reality is though, and get out of your own way and make sure that you are putting the full value of your surge upfront so that you can charge at a minimum these types of numbers like HubSpot is. Now, the key to doing this really effectively with small businesses is to understand that most small businesses are going to be price sensitive. So anything that you're asking them for upfront could be perceived as a roadblock. So you want to maximize the deals that you close by presenting these 3 different billing options so that the customers have flexibility. Okay, so the first 2 steps here, again, are presenting that value stack and then presenting your signature system so that the customer knows exactly everything that they're getting and they can see that full value that's coming their way. And then you have these 3 different proposals for billing options that you're going to present to them. The first one is the best value option. The best value option is if they prepay for the year in advance and you give them somewhere between a 15 and 20% discount is what I typically recommend if they are prepaying for that year in advance. So when you present to them what they're paying for in year 1, they're paying for the surge, whatever that number is, plus they're paying for the year in advance of those monthly payments, but they're getting a discount on all of this for prepaying in advance. Now, you may be shocked to hear that HubSpot now gets about 50% of their customers to prepay. 50%. That came straight out of the book from Mark Roberger, the first head of sales and marketing at HubSpot, who grew their business to its first $100 million, said it was an absolute game changer for HubSpot when they started asking customers to pay in advance for 2 reasons. They were getting better qualified customers and they were getting more committed customers. If customers were paying that in advance, they were the kind of customers that were planning on sticking. And when they stick for years and years, that's when your business model gets really good. So will every customer prepay in advance? Absolutely not. If you get 25%, 30% to prepay in advance, that's fantastic. And you can offer prepay for a quarter in advance, prepay for 6 months in advance, prepay for a year in advance, and have a sliding scale of discounts based on how long of a prepayment they're doing. That way you can give them the most options to get that discount by prepaying you, and you can have that opportunity to collect as much upfront cash as you can. Still, a lot of small businesses are not going to do that prepayment. So that's our next option. The next option is the most common. And the most common is when you're going to charge for that surge upfront, and then you're going to then charge for the monthly payments month after month. Okay? You've got to get that surge upfront though. That surge, let's say it's $5,000. That's going to cover your cost of sales and marketing, right? We just said the average cost to acquire a customer, let's just say it's $1,500 to $2,500. Our surge is largely just setting up the snapshot with HighLevel, so it's very high margin. So we collect that $5,000. We've got plenty of room to pay for that cost to acquire that customer. So we're getting that cash up front, and then we're getting our monthly payments as the customer goes. That's the most common scenario. And then the most flexible scenario, because you are going to run into those small businesses that are just like, man, I cannot afford that surge. The key is you don't just give up on the surge. That's always got to be in there. So what you do is you use this as leverage to time into a longer term agreement. Say, hey, look, we can finance that upfront work for you, but that only makes sense for our business if we've got a longer term contract from you to make sure that we can spread that out over time. So now you're getting them locked into a contract. That's a win for you. It's a win for them because they keep their cash in their pocket. Your surge really doesn't cost you that much anyway. And if I'm going to trade a $2,000, $2,500 investment in acquiring that customer, but I've got them locked in for years now, I'll do that all day, every day. The math works out really well for you. So you've got to present those 3 different options so that you can maximize both the upfront cash that you're getting as well as the long-term contracts, with most of the deals falling in between in that most common scenario. But the key is you never present a proposal to get your customer started on your signature system without having that surge presented upfront so that you're building that value stack and making sure that you're charging for it every single time. So the key lessons here, you've got to always present your services with the value stack of what you're going to do for them upfront. And you've got to present multiple different payment options so that you can capture as many sales as possible with a combination of maximizing upfront cash and maximizing that long-term recurring revenue. Do that and you can build your agency around HighLevel, selling customers that are going to stick with you for years to come at these reasonable price points with a very high margin automated service. And you can do it by funding your growth out of your own sales instead of having to run up your credit cards, take debt on from a loan, or get some investor that's now going to own a huge chunk of your business. I hope this video was valuable for you. Please let me know any questions that you have down in the comments. I answer them all personally. If you like this, please give it a thumbs up and share it with somebody else that you think would get some value from it. And please make sure and check out in the description of this video and the link down below here, all of my bonuses that I provide to help you grow your business using HighLevel. You'll find all the details down below and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much. See you on a future video.